Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside of their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
First Responder Financial Freedom, three guys chatting it up, episode number 22. We actually got it in order this time. Hot dog. So we're just going to go over a couple things we got going on. We had another reschedule for our interview. So we'll get back to him in a week or two. So for now, we're just going to go over what we have going on, some obstacles we faced, some things we've learned. So Tyler, so you had something going on. We'll talk about your lazy flip. What's going on with that project?
Yeah, so we put a flip on the market about a month ago, and I made the decision to rush it. Didn't finish some things that we should have. We should have laid some sod out in the front yard and finished a gate and a fence that we had built. And I just thought the market was hot enough. I kind of wanted to push it as fast as possible to get it sold. And that's backfiring on me now. So something that I always say not to do, I did. And it's resulting in us having to stall out on the market. So we're finishing the gate up this week, redoing the front steps, and then probably going to hydro seed the front yard. And then we'll do a price drop to kind of entice new buyers and then go from there. So it's funny, I never want to rush stuff. And even now, because I know the market, I wouldn't say it's dropping or anything crazy, but it's obviously slowing down in this area. It's a tertiary area of Idaho. And I think, waiting a couple weeks would have been beneficial, but I just did something that was out of character. And it's a good lesson for me learning, and everybody else is stick to what you know works, even if you're trying to rush. Trying to rush something, all it did was make it take longer, right? I wanted to rush the market, and it ended up staying on the market now for over 30 days. So I would have thought that extra week or two that I would have taken would have definitely probably been made up now. So we'll see. Got to drop the price. Going to cost me some money, and that's all on me. So it is what it is. But good lesson to learn. Just take the extra couple weeks when you're selling these properties. It's like it's a show, you got to have, I like photos, I like videos, I like staging, and everything needs to be picture perfect because you only have that first week for your first impression. So that's what I did. And then only other thing else that I got going on is I fired my VA. She was not working out. We've slowed down obviously, but there wasn't any initiative being taken either. So I just kind of finally got tired of it and let her go, and I jumped back in, and it's been good for me. I told Mike yesterday, I was texting him yesterday, we lost a deal that we were down to 360 or 380 on, and the house was worth 700. And same thing, we got a little lazy on follow-up, and somebody else swooped in and got the house from us. So for me, pay attention to details. Don't stray from what works. And if you get lazy on follow-up or on listing properties, that's what happens.
So for me, I don't have much going on. We haven't had power. The last 2 days. So me and my two giant Irish wolfhounds were little heaters. So went out and got a generator because the last one I had, I gave to somebody during Katrina, so they could power the family's house. So I bought another one yesterday, and I went on Facebook Marketplace, went to a lower income apartment complex where a guy had a 6,500 watt generator and walked out with a brand new half price in the box generator. So it worked out in my favor.
Fell off a truck.
It fell off a truck. That's exactly what happened. It fell off a truck. It still happens. So Tyler, one of the things you mentioned was hydro seeding. So it seems like a location by location thing to do. So a lot of people I know never in this area have never heard about it. Where they can you explain what hydro seeding is?
Yeah, instead of just dropping straight seed on the ground, they use this machine, and it kind of just sprays, I want to say, like fertilizer and seed all over the yard, and it just accelerates the seed growth. I had honestly never really heard of it or done it until I went to Idaho. And for me, it was actually the first flip I ever did. We ended up having to do it, and it's cheaper than sod too.
So like a green Slimer looking spray.
Yeah, exactly.
And gives it like a growth bump because it's encapsulated and won't die off.
Yeah, exactly. It accelerates growth.
Another thing I've seen people do is spray painting their grass. So they'll come in and they'll come with this giant sprayer, and like a zoysia grass out here in the East Coast, it turns brown in the wintertime. So, that's what guys do in order to make their house look nicer. During flips, they come in and they have this giant, basically spray painter, and paints the grass green for pictures. It'll die off in not die off, but it'll wash off in about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But it's definitely a good tool to have for staging houses. Talking about staging houses, I've been looking at those properties in DC lately, just out of curiosity, what stuff's going for and what's moving and if it's getting stagnant. And I see a lot of digital staging, and we talked about this on the Facebook page. But the digital staging is basically where you go in there and somebody uses Photoshop to add furniture to your property to make it look like somebody's living there. So the furniture fits perfectly, it's the perfect color, it's the perfect size, everything's spatially accurate and blah blah blah. So these are definitely tools for the toolbox to have in the future.
So we use digital staging on that property I was talking about, and that's a good point. So it looks great on the MLS and Zillow and stuff like that. But again, I usually try to always actually stage the property, so when they go in, it's a consistent thing. And this, we did not do it. We did virtual staging, and that's having a little pushback too. I think you can virtually stage properties that, I guess have broader market appeal. But for like this house, it's a small house. It's a 2-2, and it's a smaller house. It's like 824 square feet. That's another thing I should have done. And that wasn't really a cost saving issue. It was my stager didn't want to drive as far out as this town is outside of Boise. And again, I should have stuck to my guns. I mean, I think with the market changing now, and even when it was hot, I think you have to look at it. You have to do everything you can to maximize value. And I do like virtual staging. You got a nice looking house that's a 3-2, let's say, standard for your area, 1,500 square feet. If it looks killer, it's awesome because you do save some money and you do save some time. But for those properties that are a little bit more out there or niche, I would say do traditional staging. That's just my opinion. I don't know if you guys have a different one, but
I've always stayed away from it. I'd never really cared for virtual staging, and the biggest thing I reasoned was whenever people, like 99% of people are looking at the listing on their phone or on their computer before they ever go see it, right? And if they have this vision in their head of what it's going to look like, and then they get there and they're very underwhelmed, that's always been a concern of mine. So what we've done is I've staged properties, of course. However, what we've done is just kind of the moderate stagings where it's kind of like you go in and do a little bit, but not like what we were doing, where it was like 2 rooms worth of furniture, the living room, the kitchen. So I don't know. I hope to not have to stage a whole lot more because I don't want to keep flipping.
Why is that? Everything's been going good lately, hasn't it?
Always.
Yeah, you got rid of your undesirable, right?
Yeah, but he got out of jail, so he came back, set up camp on the front of this property again. So
does he still have belongings in the house?
No, fortunately I got to pay for 30 days of storage. So I did a little market research on some storage facilities while I was doing it. So I had to pay to store it. So I had to pay to remove it, pay to store it, and then pay to remove it from storage because he was locked up. So he never came to get it, and I only had to keep it for 30 days. So I threw it all away.
Oof.
So, but then when he got out of jail, he came back and, I don't know, set up camp. I never physically saw him. I never saw him on the cameras, but all the belongings that he had on the front porch would indicate it was him coming back. So, and based on the one resident's complaints to us, she filed her notice that she's moving out prior to her lease ending because of him coming back. And she feels that I'm not doing everything within our power to basically protect her, the residents, and everything else. So
are you going to honor the lease break?
Yeah, I asked her if she wanted to move out that day.
Yeah.
Because frankly, she's a headache. I mean, it's not just with this, it's with everything. You name it. So
is it the property, you think, or the location?
No,
or
as far as her,
or? Or just you said she's kind of a nightmare, and then obviously this guy is too.
She's one of those residents, like she pays her rent on time, she takes care of the place, but it's like you name it, it's a problem. So, for instance, this is the same place. So it's got a metal roof, so we resealed the metal roof, and this is also the same place that got struck by lightning like a week ago and blew the chimney through the neighbor's windows.
God might be telling you something.
Halfway through our roof. So anyways, we're doing some roof work, and obviously roof work's a little weather dependent, and it's kind of time sensitive. So we're outside sealing this roof. It's like a 1-day job, and her and then one of the ladies staying in an Airbnb at this place complained that the smell was overwhelming. Keep in mind, this is outside and on a roof, not an inside ceiling. So yes, it does have an odor, but complaining because it had an odor. Said, yes, it has an odor. It'll dissipate. It's outside. You'll be okay. So the one lady that I'm talking about that wants to move out basically was throwing a fit about it. So this was all the same day that she decided she was going to move out. But then she's also realized, so I said, so you'll be out by the 31st. This is in July. She said, well, no, I can't find anywhere to live. So I'm not going to move out until I find a place to live. Okay, well, I guess give me your 30-day notice when you're actually looking to move out in 30 days then. So, and then the Airbnb lady, the same thing. She moved out like 2 weeks early because the smell on the roof outside. So, and there's like no recourse I have with Airbnb, but she can, if I basically contest it, then they basically escalate it. And I don't know. So, yeah.
I've had some undesirables in my Airbnb as well. And I had to have the carpet repaired. And they took the speaker sound system, the surround sound speaker system that's Bluetooth off the TV and off the floor and brought it outside to use it outside. And they brought the chairs. Yeah. Then they brought the chairs outside for the dining room table, which are elevated. They're not like normal height. They're like a bistro set. They brought them outside so they stay on top of them to wash the top of their cars. And I'm on my camera. I got on my camera because I got it's Eufy. I guess it's an Amazon brand. And I got on the camera and I was like, hey, you need to put the indoor furniture back inside the house. And they're looking around like, who's talking to us? Who's talking to us? And I guess they realized like that's one of the reasons you have cameras at your properties is to prevent this type of damage and stuff like that. And the surround sound speaker is busted. I got to get a new one. So I went through Airbnb air claims, which is a pain in the butt. Everything Airbnb does is sent out overseas. So there's sometimes a language barrier, sometimes a disconnect in time, sometimes disconnecting if they know what their rules are or not. It's always something.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. So I just the place that I've shown the corporate rental I have, they just moved out yesterday. And then I have my first Airbnb guest checking in today. And so I'm going through that turnover process. So it's been great. Like the insurance company model is definitely pretty nice because you don't have to worry about the rent. They pay above market and you don't have the turnover of the Airbnb stuff. But I can already tell like the Airbnb stuff that I'm going to have to manage because also since the last time we did this, my property manager of 4 years quit. So that's a whole nother thing. So I just know like the turnover part of this, I'm going to have to find some people to assist and systematize this, or I'm not going to want to keep doing the turnovers. I can tell you that. So, but nonetheless, it's been a good house. It's a good income stream. However, it is definitely way more active. There's way more of like what you just described with the furniture and it really boggles my mind. Like some of the things I get dinged for, like we have a cabin. Okay. When I say cabin, you would probably think, okay, this is not going to be in Manhattan. It's going to be a little more remote. And I put in there, like you need 4-wheel drive in the winter. It's a gravel road, all this stuff. People dinged us on our review because of the cell phone service and also because the Wi-Fi kept cutting in and out, which I'm not 100% certain it's the Wi-Fi because this is a 500 square foot cabin. Like, but anyways, like, so then that negatively impacts my reviews, obviously. And it's like, I've told my business partner, like, Airbnb seems like the polar opposite of self-storage, where Airbnb is, while real estate is a part of the product, really what they're paying for is like concierge hotel service at like the Four Seasons is what they want at the Motel 6 price.
Yep.
So it's one of them things, like I'm just kind of reevaluating. Like right now I have 6 or 7 places on Airbnb, and it's like, I don't know if it's great, like as far as the income goes. However, it is a lot more hands-on, a lot more time intensive, a lot more service oriented. And like I said, now my property manager was handling all that. She's done on July 31st, 2 days after we're supposed to close our first storage deal. So I got a lot of figuring out a new asset class while absorbing a bunch of stuff that I wasn't having to do for the last 3 to 4 years. So I don't think I want to keep going in the model where it's so hands-on, so much turnover, so many touches with the customer.
There's a reason that return's higher, right? Like everybody likes talking about Airbnb. They're like, hey, I'm making so much money, but we did it. I mean, I don't have any now, but I have done it. And I was just like, after a while, it's like, this is a lot of work.
My dad and I were talking about that yesterday. Yep. Just like, hey, the marketplace is basically rewarding you with higher returns because there's more work than just listing it as a 12-month rental. No,
that's why I love. What do you love?
I love watching. It's funny. So Aaron, you added me to a couple of those Airbnb groups, and I just like watching what's going down right now. I'm like, dude, there is no way in hell you could pay me to do some of these Airbnbs. And a lot of it, like you said, it's people who, I think there's just a lot of focus on the end number, and then you get into it and you realize, oh, hey, this is actually a lot of work. Not that you didn't know that, but it just gets highlighted when all this stuff goes wrong. But that's the beauty of it too. You guys tried it. You realize you don't like it, even with the additional income. It's like, okay, check that off the list. I don't need to do that again.
I'm not saying I won't keep doing it, but I am going to. I can take a somewhat reduced return and rent it to one of these long-term government contracts, like that. Whenever I say that, like the Border Patrol people or whatever, I can rent it to them where the stipend might only be like $101 a day. So it's less than what it could produce on Airbnb. However, there's not the turnover. Theoretically, there should be less wear and tear. There's less people washing their cars with your kitchen tables and Bluetooth speakers. But the other thing I think, I don't want to say like it's going to happen, but it's looking like that market is, in my opinion, oversaturated in a lot of areas. Like where that cabin I've referenced is, there's so many of those types of properties on the market there. It's like there can only be so much demand. And I think we've said it before, over the last 2 years with a lot of the mandatory lockdowns and travel restrictions, people had to look for closer options. Well, now as that is starting to be lowered or reduced or whatever, people can go back to their normal travel life, and you might start to see some of these occupancies drop, which it sounds like, and I don't have my finger on the pulse as close as some folks, but what I do read in a lot of the Airbnb groups is how occupancy is down, demand is down, and I think that could be a reason for that. Not that there won't be demand, but I think a lot of people have been riding that wave, just like a lot of, realtors the last 2 years. They've been a fantastic realtor, not because they were a fantastic realtor, but because they were just in the right place at the right time. So yeah, I think I'm going to probably look to maybe just course correct a little bit. It's on Airbnb until September. It's booked every day in July. August is not fully booked. And September I have like a week, but I think I'm going to throw it back on Zillow and throw it back on some of the groups looking for like a longer term corporate type tenant, just because I think that's going to be more my speed. So
when you talk about corporate tenants, like this is a conversation I was actually having with one of my guys yesterday is, so there you have long-term tenants, mid-term tenants, and short-term tenants. So the long-term is your normal like year or 2 year contract, and your short-term is your Airbnb and VRBO. And the midterm tenants, which Mike got into that realm this past year, is the insurance people. So like if your house burns up or floods, then the insurance will pay for your place to live. Or if you said USGS or the Border Patrol, Like they do midterm contracts. They do a month to 3 months, or traveling nurses do 1 month, 3 months, 6 month, 9 month contracts. So I think I don't know. I'm starting to like that midterm realm just because it's less turnover, less headache, less management, a little bit less return, but still more return than a long term tenant a lot of times. I think Mike is spot on with that short term analogy. Is that like it's getting oversaturated? Like I look at, and I'm my own biggest enemy when I look at this stuff because I'm like, oh, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can try that. This is a very great short term rental, but then does it make sense financially? Like if I put 100,000 or 200,000 or $300,000 out there, what's my return on that? And is the market saturated? And am I competing against 1,000 people or 2,000 people or 3,000 homes, or whatever it might be, or am I my own little niche market? And if it doesn't work as a short term rental, can it work as a long term rental? Can it work as a midterm rental? I don't know. Then you look at your insurances, like, so there's insurance doesn't see what we call midterm rentals the same way they see long-term rentals. So if you have a midterm rental, insurance is going to want you to get short-term rental insurance, which is significantly higher than a long-term rental insurance. So your cost goes up, your cost basis goes up. So you have to overcome that obstacle. I know for one of my properties, I was doing a cost analysis out of curiosity, and I asked my insurance person if what the comparison was. I think it was like $600 if it was a long-term rental, or $2,300 if it was a short-term rental. And there's no midterm rental, so my cost basis just went up. What's that? $1,800 or something like that. $1,900, whatever it is. It went up a significant amount of money. Now I know people who are doing week-long rentals and they're booked out, but they're very waterfront specific, condos.
Sure.
So their buy-in is higher, their overhead is higher, and you were spot on. Like people can't travel during COVID, so what are they going to do? They still want to get away and relax. So they're going to go to the mountains, the lake, the beach. So there's a influx. So the data points for the last 2 years don't jive with history. They're just a very unique
in so many things, not just.
Yeah, across the board. But the data points that all indicate that it's a great market to be invested in the last 2 years might be false data points. They might be inaccurate. Yeah. So for me, I'm like, what do I want to get into next? So I know we all three of us have looked at storage units because I think storage units is a fantastic market to get into. It's just that's starting to get saturated. And then, depending on where you are, is there a need for it? A lot of the ones I see going for sale seem to be in flyover states with a declining population. And they're giving you these projections like if you were at 90 or 95% occupancy, well, yeah, if the market didn't, if the people didn't move out of that market, it wasn't a declining economy, then yeah, that would make sense. But if it's declining, I'm not going to reach that 85 or 90% occupancy. So I'm looking at the next thing. I still like tiny homes. I still think there's a demand in the market for it. I just need the market prices or the construction prices to come down. I got a buddy of mine building a house right now at $380 a square foot. And I was like, I can't make that work for tiny homes. It's too high. For 1,000 square foot home, you're over 350 with land acquisition and clearing the lot and everything. So,
yeah, that's crazy. I guess that's a relative number also. I look at, just for like fun, I look at a lot of places online in Florida, and I've seen north of $1,200 a square foot. That's kind of crazy. Like where I live, like that's just stupid high, and that's not new construction. So,
so one of the conversations we had yesterday was, what is your cost to replacement? So if you were to build a house at $380 a square foot, how much is it to buy that same house in that neighborhood? Is it $300 a square foot? Is it $350? Is it $400? Like you're right, it's relative. So are we building a house for the same price as we could buy a house? And if we buy a house, it's gonna be worth more because it's got less wear and tear. I was talking to one of my buddies yesterday from work, and he's looking at Florida just like Mike is. And he was saying we were talking about, like, if you buy a house now and make it a rental property for the next 10 years, the house is probably already 10, 20, 30 years old. And in 10 years, when you're ready to retire down there and make that your home, now it's got 10 more years of renter wear and tear on the property. So it might not be in as good a shape. So does it make sense to buy land now and hold on to it, put a tiny house on there, rent that out, and then do an addition? Like there's a lot of tools and strategies there.
Yeah. So you said that without dealing with the cost of it, what is your exit strategy then with the tiny home? Rent it, sell it, finance it?
So for me, what I'm looking at doing is I'm still in the process of trying to find a trailer park that's under market value, that's beat up. I don't want to own a trailer park. I'd like to reinvent it into a tiny home community, because it's kind of niche. There's a high demand for cheap housing. It just depends on if I can create that housing in that market, and change the dynamics of the people see trailer parks and as a low income area. Like, so if I can change the dynamics of it, make it a little bit prettier, a little bit nicer. And
Could you
change
do that though without changing the home type?
I guess you
I
could,
mean,
but
trailer
I'd rather,
park, almost like a derogatory term. Mobile
yeah,
home community or park, is what they always church the sign up to say. But you could. That's what a lot of these folks do. Like, I'd love to get a mobile home park. One of the bankers I work with, he owns 2, and I mean, he just talks about basically how they're ATM machines.
yeah.
And I would want it to where it's on public water and sewer, and I didn't own the homes. I just took care of the infrastructure. Like, that would be fantastic. But that's also very difficult to locate. I agree. There's a huge demand and always will and continue to be, in my opinion, a demand for that workforce housing in those types of places. It
So
may
do
not
you
be as
think,
cool looking as a tiny home community, but
yeah. So do you think that if you had the option to live at a mobile home community park versus a tiny home community, which one is more desirable? Off the break, just your reaction.
so I guess first off, that would depend on your, I think, family dynamic. For me, with 4 people, like, I would probably pick the mobile home community just because I think there's various stages of those. Like, some of the ones I've seen are extremely nice. Like, they
Mhm.
all 2000 or newer mobile home. Like, it looks very nice. And then I've seen some where it's like, hey, that thing's from 1960. It's got a fresh coat of duct tape on the outside. It looks horrible. There's potholes in the road that will eat your vehicle. No. But if you go into some of these tiny home communities, I don't know what the average square footage is of something like that. But for me, like, I would need 4 houses basically, or 3 houses of a tiny home to basically get what you can get out of a double wide manufactured home. So I think a lot of it depends on your family dynamic.
Yeah. What about you, Tyler? If you could, if somebody said you had to live at one of these, which one sounds more appealing to you?
I agree with Mike. I mean, just I think it's from where I'm coming from. If I got 4 people with me, I think just the mobile home seems more attractive. And I always think about resale too. Tiny homes are cool and they're very in vogue right now, but like, I think it takes a special buyer that is interested in that, right? Like, that does not want space. So I would stay with the mobile home for sure. I think tiny. I mean, and that's the thing. I said, what are you targeting too? Like, I don't think Mike or myself or you are the target audience
No,
for
not
tiny
demographic.
homes, right? But if you have, I think the tiny home are people maybe that are empty nesters or young, like, millennials that like that, and that it's cool. But like, right now, the last thing I would want to do is downsize. I like having space. And like Mike said, there's a lot of manufactured mobile homes that are super nice that I would totally be interested in. I always think my grandparents had one in Baja, and that thing was killer, and it was on the water. I mean, I didn't think, oh man, we're going to a mobile home. Like, dude, we're going to their house on the water in Mexico, Never once was I turning my nose up at it. So I don't know. The tiny home for me is interesting in different facets. I know, like, the hike that Mike just went on, you guys are building that or raising money, I should say, for homeless vets, right? And that is a tiny home community. That I think is super cool. Like, that kind of stuff I think is rad, and
When you also
really,
have to think that's transitional housing. Now, this is
correct.
serving a very specific need where somebody can stay there for 1 month up to 2 years. But in my experience, even with smaller apartments, you typically have more turnover. And sometimes, not always, you are appealing to somebody that maybe has less than a less stable home life or family and job. Not that that's always the case, but that's been my experience with it. So, well, tiny homes, definitely something that's interesting though to me. Like, you definitely see more of them than you have. Sorry, I put together this new chair and I'm trying to get, like, adjusted here. I'm not.
You're good.
Looks like I'm drunk on a cruise ship over here.
I was going to say, I know we talked about it a little bit, but I was thinking we should kind of interview you a little bit because you have got that storage unit that's closing shortly.
Yeah. It's been a
So
crazy month and it's only half over. So
do you want to kind of talk about, like, I'm curious too, but like how you got it, what your lead source was, where it's at. I told Mike yesterday, I don't know if he knew I was serious or not, but I've just been kind of stalking him on the groups that we're a part of for the storage. When he's posting stuff, I'm taking notes, man, because like I want to know. And what he said yesterday is what I found to be true, and I think it's good for everybody that's listening or in the group. Is I can see what he's doing, and I know because I've done it myself, and I'm sure Aaron has too. He's going through the learning process right now as he's buying it. And I know this may not be popular, but I'm telling you right now, I watched him post it and I'm like, okay, he's getting into the nitty gritty. I love this part. You are learning way more right now than you ever could by reading a post, buying a book. I'm just watching your thought process. I know you're talking about the fence, the direction of the property, all these things. I'm like, dude, this is where he's going to cut his teeth. I think you guys have already done a good job on acquisition and you're going to learn. And then that next one is going to be better than this one for sure. And at some point it's just boom, 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 boom. You're going to be rapid fire. So I don't know. Do you want to talk about how you got it? A little bit of the details, whatever you want to share, both for myself and I'm sure Aaron selfishly, and then everybody else that's listening too.
Sure. So I'll throw the caveat that it has not closed yet. We close at the end of the month, 3 days before my property manager quits and 6 days before I go on vacation. So I don't like to do anything the easy way, I guess. So I had said that I've obviously expressed interest in the self-storage asset class, and I basically have done what a lot of people do when it comes to investing, I think, is I talk about it, I read about it, I listen about it, and I never do anything. And we went to Aaron and I were at Ian Horowitz's event, the Let's Effing Go Mastermind a couple months ago. And that's where I made the decision to commit to it. And some people have probably done it before. You write a letter to yourself as if you were 6 months out, and sometimes they mail it to you, which is pretty cool. So I wrote this as if I've already acquired it. So like I was like, hey man, I'm committing to this. And what I did was I host a meetup locally. This is how I acquired it. At the beginning of the meetup, we have a part of the meetup where it's like, hey, success stories, or what do you have to offer? What are you looking for? What can you provide? So it's basically just an opportunity for everybody to stand up, say like, hey, I own a carpet company, or hey, I have a wholesale deal for sale, or whatever the case may be. Well, I said, hey, I'm looking to buy a self-storage facility, and these are the parameters, and I'm looking anywhere within flying distance. So I kind of said that tongue in cheek, but basically just throwing it out there. I'm looking for this. Well, my speaker that night was a banker who obviously heard that. And then he found a listing that had hit the market, and he tagged me in it on Facebook. So that's how I found out about it. It was listed on the MLS for 6 days at that point, but I get daily reports on stuff that hit the market, but the way this was entered into the MLS, it did not generate like a thing. And it's still on, if you go to like Redfin, it just still shows it as off market. So it was a residential realtor who was selling it for a family member. So I found out about it through word of mouth because I stood up and just told people what I was doing and looking for. And then that created basically 40 people then that could then say, hey, Mike's looking for this. And that's exactly what happened. So I made contact with the realtor. Fortunately, I've done a deal with this realtor before, and he knew we could close. So that was cool. So like we already kind of had a little bit of a relationship because these guys are just looking to close stuff. He wanted to know if I had a realtor. I said, nope, you can have both sides of the deal. Basically telling him you can have both sides. Basically, you're doubling your commission that way, because while I have a business partner like who is a realtor, like we're not looking for the commission, we're looking for the asset. So we intend to finance it via a private lender, and then we're going to bring the capital to reposition it. So I've been meeting with a lot of people with getting bids for drainage and stonework. And like you said about the fence and the gate and the security cameras and the treatment of the metal, and going through and getting the rent roll compared to what you actually have. So there's a lot of like due diligence work that requires some heavy lifting, and I'm doing that right now so that I can learn. Just like the first time you would buy a rental property or a flip, it may not be a home run, and I don't anticipate this being a home run, so to speak, but I just need it to be a single, maybe a double, because that's how I'm going to learn. And then I can take this, which this place is relatively close to my house. So that comfort factor for me is nice, just because I can go there, I can do stuff. That's just kind of like my nature. Not that I'm going to be like spreading the gravel, but it's not like I had to fly to Louisiana for it. So I guess that can be a good and a bad thing.
So the location, though, for like, I know where it is. Location is near a college town. It's near a growing community. There is upside to it.
Yes.
In terms of location. So what are you going to do to grow the property? Like, I know you're looking at fences. You're looking at doing more storage units. You're looking at a couple of things. So what are you looking at doing to the property, and what's the benefit of doing each one?
So right now, rents haven't been raised in 10 to 12 years.
Shoot.
So operationally, it's rented, I think, like $6.35 per square foot is the average, and the market calls for like $10.50 a square foot. So annually. So like when you look at it right now, it should be able to double for the most part what they're asking in rent. So raising rates is one thing going to do right out the gate. And then going in, there's no automation whatsoever. Like you have to meet them to sign the lease. The exterior of the facility, like the lighting's all busted up. The roads have a bunch of like ravines from the water draining. So we're going to go in and physically improve the property with new asphalt in portion of it, new lighting. There's no security cameras. We're going to install security cameras. We're going to treat the actual building, because right now it's like very dull and drab and just kind of corroded in certain spots. So they go in and do this system called Everbright, which basically like revitalizes it, kind of like what the Roof Max episode, where they go in and like rejuvenate the roof. So we're going to do that. We're rebranding it, because right now it's just got like a sign that you can't even read. It's just all weathered. So we're going to just kind of go in, clean it up, make it nice, make it available so you can rent something online. You can pay for it online. I don't ever have to physically meet you to rent you a place. So those are just some of the things we plan on doing exterior or on site. And then we're also adding, I'm going to do it in 2 phases. It's about a 400-foot depth. We're going to do 180 feet by 50 foot stone, like clear all the soil and stuff and make it RV parking or boat, RV, trailer, that kind of stuff. So that's going to be a couple $1,000s to do that. However, the market rent for something like that is anywhere from like $65 to $100 a month for just uncovered storage parking for that kind of stuff. So I figure even if I did $65, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to have room for increasing revenue by doing that. So
you're creating a pad. You're creating $65 a month by creating a gravel pad. Yeah.
And I think
great,
based on the way I'm trying to figure out like the best way to lay it out, that's what Tyler was referencing. I'm just saying, at worst case, I can only fit 10 or 12 spots there, which I think a lot of these places do different size or different depths. So you might have like 10 by 40 or 10 by 20 or 10 by 10, like these little parking spots. Like if you want to park your knobby tire motorcycle there on a trailer, you might only need like a 10 by 10 or a 5 by 5 or whatever. Where if you have like a fifth wheel, you might want something a little bit bigger. So
well, first
it's going to
of all,
be a lot of learning by doing.
I'm impressed that you bought it. That's fucking awesome. I know we're a little bit jealous and envious.
So it's one of those, like, I checked all the boxes. There's operational value add, there's physical value add. It's in that strike point where it's 9,000 square feet, and it has a current appraisal, which I have my own opinion on appraisals, that appraised for like 670. We're purchasing it for right around 550. So we have equity theoretically already in the deal. But it's one of those things. If I can increase the value of it by increasing the income by almost double, like I think I can get it to about $8,000 to $9,000 a month in income, and that therefore is going to make the property worth probably anywhere from like $800,000 to $900,000.
And that's where commercial differs than residential, right? When you increase your operating income, it's going to increase the value, which is huge. And like you said, I'm assuming you guys bought it at its current state. You ran all the numbers at its current state because, like Aaron said, there is. I read those same posts and everything was like, if this, then that, but this. It's like, well, no. I need to know what it pencils out at now. And you were making me think too, when you add all those RV spots, there's a guy on our job who has one out here in Southern California. And then he started realizing, oh, I can add firewood. I can just have a firewood section because they're already coming to pick up. And dude, it's all these little things that reminds me of like a coin operated laundromat, all these little extra add-ons. Dude, it becomes like a little cash cow. And like Aaron said, for adding the pad, like I said, I like watching you go through it because I'm learning too. And there's all these little things that you can do to add money. And that's why I think real estate is fun. Honestly, it's these things that you're going through right now. It's like, how can I tweak these little things to make this a profitable, purchase? And then something like you said, you turn a single or a double, like you referenced, into a couple years. If everything goes well, it's a home run on your first deal. And I mean, I'm guessing you guys have looked at it. Worst case, currently, does it cash flow right now? Like if you were to buy it at its current price with the private money, etc., it's still like you said, a single or a double.
Yeah, based on the way it's producing right now, based on the price we're purchasing at, it wouldn't be anything to write home about. That's for certain. It'd be like a wash. However, it is so under market rents. It's just like if you bought a town or a duplex that was being rented for $495 a unit, like, and market rent's $1,200. It's like, well, the current numbers, it doesn't make sense, but I know because I know the market. And while I don't know this asset class, we just talked about how I just rented storage for that undesirable. I forget what we paid, but it was like over $100 for 1 month for everything. So obviously you're going to have people that maybe only rent for a month, but some of these leases I've gone through 2002, 2006, like these people have had this junk in storage for a long time. So, and I've called other facilities just to see what's available, and most of them have a wait list for everything. So now that demand could drop a little bit, but even if I get it up to market rents and my vacancy stays at 10%, maybe I don't stay 100% full or 95% full, it's still going to be significantly more than like that. It'll cover itself many times over. So yeah, I'm hoping to learn a lot. I've already learned a fair amount and we haven't even closed yet. So Travis Oglesby's calling me. Sorry, buddy. I'll call you back.
To Tyler's point, like one of the things I was looking at in College Park, there was a Rita's Ice for sale or coming for sale. It's off market currently, but I was talking to the owner's daughter and I was asking them how they came to the valuation of what they want to sell it for. And I was going over the line items, and there's like they have a speed camera on the property that the county pays them to have on the property. So they took that into account in their valuation. And I was like, damn, like I never even thought about that. But then to Tyler's point, like the coin operated stuff, like if you add a soda machine on there, you could add a couple $100 a month in revenue. If a candy machine, like you see a lot of the car washers that do that. Yeah, like car washes as a vacuum. Now it's another $300 a year because you have a vacuum there or an air compressor. So have you thought about doing any of those kind of things on the property, Mike?
Based on where this is located, I don't know how much of that would be useful or worth it. If I could, I don't think because of the topography it would make sense, but like, and where it's at, like a billboard doesn't really make sense. However, like a cell phone tower would be cool, but still I don't think it's probably like the most desirable spot because it's not like a high point. But I've thought about there's on one of those groups, somebody recommended something called Box Store or something. They're basically portable. They're basically a shipping container chopped up. So the one thing I'm trying to work through is I don't think the county will allow me to build any more units on this land. However, with the gravel pad, it's just a gravel pad. It's not like I'm building a new structure. And if I put a couple of those containers there, that could also increase the amount of storage I have. And then on the back side of it, I could put the advertisements for like my insurance company or, a couple other places, kind of like what Dylan talked about is he sells signage. So it's, a small revenue stream, but he's reaching out. And if you think about the type of people that are going to be using that, maybe I could talk to somebody that does like boat, how they like winterize boats and that kind of stuff, like reach out to some of those. Hey, you want to advertise? It's like $50 a month. I don't know, captive audience. So no, right now, my biggest concern is just repositioning it physically and then operationally. I think that's going to be where the focus is for right now.
There's a storage expo coming up down south, and I was looking at my phone as you were talking, and it's an expo specifically geared towards RV and boat storage covered auction or covered storage. So it's like there's definitely a market for it. If they're going to do an expo about it, there's definitely people out there who will pay for covered storage. A buddy of mine who does boat wrapping out in Delaware, he charges $7 a square foot for wrapping a boat for the season. And then in that market, there's a cost per foot of storage. So if you have a 20-foot boat, we'll say it's $5 a square foot or $5 a foot of storage. So it's $100 a month. So I was like, that's kind of a cool calculation, but they have it down to a science out there. I thought that was kind of neat. I like the add-on value stuff. I like the little niche stuff like Dylan when he puts his billboard signs up and charges for a sign space or what you're talking about. I think there's ways to add value to these things.
You can charge to have access to the camera system. So like say you wanted to be able to pull up on security camera your boat, that's an extra fee every month. Granted, the security cameras I'm going with, I don't think that will be an option, but yeah, million ways to make $1 million, man. So I'm just hoping that we can take this down, get it positioned pretty well over the next couple months. And then I'll be dealing with how do I refinance it? I've talked to a couple folks and basically that'll be a whole nother step in the learning cycle for me because I don't know. So
I think too, and you glossed over it, but I'm a huge believer in this actually more recently is what you said. I think people shouldn't discount is you put something out there. You wrote a letter to yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Which is huge. You put it out there. And then what we like to say, magically things started happening.
Yep.
There's a lot of people. I'm part of Ed Milet and Andy's mastermind, Andy Frizella. And those two talk about visualization a ton and the amount of detail and time they put into it. And our buddy Todd Swaggerty and I were talking about this the other day, especially as firemen, blue collar guys, when you hear mindset and all this stuff, it's like hocus pocus.
Very taboo.
Oh,
here comes the snowflakes.
You might as well suggest a new way to do a drill at the fire station. It's going to get the exact same response. Oh, this is, I'm going to change it up. We're not going to do it the way we always have done it. And I'm telling you, there's so much power in it. And, like I said, when I hear you talk about it now, a couple years ago, I would have been like, well, that's silly. That's not why it happened. But I truly believe you wrote it out. So your brain is on autopilot right now, thinking storage. You're telling people about it, which is making them go, oh, I know somebody.
Sure.
And you're doing it in action. So there's a book out there. It's called Chatter. It's all about self-talk. And really? I'm reading it now. And it is not like the fastest read. But again, it goes over the same things that we're talking about, how you talk to yourself and how you do a lot of things like that. And eliminating negative mind space is huge. So I don't know. Like I said, for me, it's interesting. I'm getting more and more into this stuff as time goes on. And I think you used intention and you got it. So kudos to you. I think it's huge. It's exciting too, because I want to see how it goes. But mindset is huge. Chatter is a good book. I would read it. And then I would also go to Ed Milet's podcast, and we can link it. He has something, I want to say it's called the Success Code, where he talks about this too. And those two guys, Andy also mentions that everything that's laid out right now, his business, he has visualized over and over and over to a crazy amount of detail. And it has come to fruition with, like, I forget exactly how he mentions it, but the amount of detail that he lays out in his vision is currently in action. So kudos to you. I think it's huge, man.
Thank you. So
congratulations. We're all going to learn from your
not there yet.
movements.
So you referenced the nature walk, as they call it at work, the hike I just did. So I was spending some time with an individual who's does things much, much larger than what me or we're doing right now. And he's like, where do you see your business in 5 years? And I kind of broke it down. And one of the things we were talking about is like a place somewhere down south or somewhere warm. And his next question was, what color is the front door? And I was like, what? He's like, haven't you thought about what it looks like inside, what it looks like outside? I'm like, well, kind of. He's like, so what color is the front door? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, well, you should get that deep with it and put it on either your wall or something. And basically stating what you just did is, once you get the clarity in your mind, you know, it's like you got the hardest part done. And it's like you often get what you think about, and that's because if you're not getting much, it's because, like, well, how much are you actually thinking about it? But it's like the whole thing, like, what you believe is what you think, and what you think is what you feel, and what you feel is what you do, and what you do is what you get. Basically, to that extent, it's so true. Like, so yeah, man, I don't know. It's definitely a trial by fire, and I'm sure there already has been a couple little bumps along the way. There's going to be some things that I'm like, wow, I don't know how to fix this, but like, I've leaned on some folks in this group. Dylan has been super helpful. I talked to Ian, like, so I've basically have used resources just like we recommend all the time, and you can only get so far, and then you just kind of have to take action to figure out the last couple parts. So
figure it the F out. You're always going to figure it the F out.
We will. I will keep you posted of the trials and tribulations. So
I got a question for you guys. This is both for Mike and Tyler, and this is kind of I guess we're going to probably wrap up on this. Is, can you guys explain what these hedge funds are doing buying houses? I have a reason for this question. So why are these companies like BlackRock buying up all these houses? Tyler, you want to go first?
Well, I mean, from what I know, it's, two things. They believe that, I just listened to a podcast about this yesterday. They are thinking that America is going to turn into a renter's nation. And so they're deploying all their capital based off of that. And then number two, they have a significant amount of capital and they have to put it to use. So they're needing inventory, and they're continuing to buy property because of that. Steve Trang is the host of the Real Estate Disruptors, and he had somebody on who was talking about this too. And from what I know, a lot of them too, they're buying inventory, and they're also doing these huge build to rent communities. So they're making a long play on the fact that they think that America is going to become more like Europe, and that we're going to be a renter's nation. So I'm not sure if that's what you were thinking, but from what I have been listening to the last couple of days, that's the consensus I get. And it makes sense, because we all laugh and think, oh, these guys are paying crazy prices. They have no idea what they're doing. These people do not operate large hedge funds with billions and billions under management because they're morons. We may not understand what they're doing, and they may make mistakes, but there is a long-term play, I think. And when I heard that, I agree with it, because I think that's what they're doing right now. Is they're gobbling up inventory, and they're betting long term that more and more people will be unable to afford the American dream.
Yeah, Grant Cardone has been basically stating the whole renter nation thing for a while. Like, that was his belief, regardless of what you think of him. But yeah, I did. Somebody interviewed me the thing about the iBuyers, and I think the iBuyer thing is slightly different than the hedge fund thing. So, like, what you just referenced as far as hedge funds, like, exactly. First off, they have a ton of capital they have to deploy. If they don't deploy it, like, they're not making their money. So, but I totally agree. Like, we've talked about the cost of material. We've talked about the cost of labor. Like, you can make $20 an hour working at McDonald's right now. So the cost to build these places is not going down. So they're basically just trying to gobble up as much inventory. And as far as the build to rent communities, we're seeing that around here is where they're literally coming in and building a community, and then they keep 40 townhomes right in the middle of it as the rentals. So, yeah. I don't
So
know.
here's the reason I ask is, as we're sitting here, I just got a text message from a friend of mine. He retired as a lieutenant commander in the Navy. And he was like, he's been asking me questions about real estate, and he has a property for sale in South Carolina. And he had a corporate entity offer to buy the house for $15,000 under market value, or under the asking price. So we'll say he's asking $350 and they offer $335. They said, we need 10 days of due diligence, and we'll get back to you if you want repairs. So he was like, well, should I take it? Should I not? I was like, well, if they give you a week, then take 6 days, 6.5 days to give them an answer. I was like, in the meantime, see if you can find other buyers. Get through your first weekend on the market, because you haven't had a single weekend yet. And I told him to reach back. This is kind of a tip. Reach back out to other houses that sold in the neighborhood and see if the realtors that were selling those houses have buyers that were trying to buy those houses. So he just sent me a text message saying that he talked to the realtor and there was no other buyers interested other than the people who put an offer on the house. So now he knows his market going into the sale of this house. So he's still got 4.5 days left to give these people, this hedge fund or this corporate buyer, an answer. So, and I agree with you guys 100%. I was reading an article recently about what it takes to control a market, and 20%, if you can control 20% of a market, a primary market. So we'll say like DC, Dallas, Boston, Fort Myers, Florida, whatever it might be. If you can control 20% of a primary market, you can control the entire market. And the reason is because if you move the needle on 20% of the market, then the others have to follow suit. So if you move it up, everybody else is going to move it up. If you move it down, everybody else is going to move it down. And I've seen this in one specific area in my mind where a company can control who comes and who goes and stays at these properties because they have the foothold of more than 50% of the market. So if they want to offer rentals, they do. If they don't want to offer, they don't have to. If they want to offer, incentives to come there, they can. But they don't need to because they control who comes and goes. And I'm kind of in a roundabout way is like, there's still a good old boy system in all these markets, and networking is a big part of this, and understanding the moving parts and why they're moving the way they are. So that's the great reason I had the question, is because you're competing against corporate housing. When the market sells to a corporate house, that house will probably never come back to the retail market because it's just going to be shared between packages.
This hedge fund will sell it to that hedge fund.
Exactly.
They'll sell it to this Chinese bank. Yep.
So once it comes, you gotta say something, Ty? I don't want to.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because they're taking more inventory off the market. We already have an inventory shortage because of material costs. So you now have less and less homes for buyers. They become renters. And yeah, I agree. I think I definitely think it's here to stay. So it's interesting.
It's going to definitely change the dynamic of the American dream of home ownership.
Which even it's hard, makes it. I keep telling myself that because I want to sell some rentals, and I'm like, well, just follow the smartest people, and they're buying to hold long term. I'm like, I just need to get that out of my head and realize that long term, this is going to probably pay off huge. So,
agree. I didn't even get into that, but I could talk about some rentals that I'm looking to unload right now, but it's. The only way I want to do it is if I can 1031 that into a newer, nicer asset, or some of the owner finance stuff we've talked about. So that's a whole nother topic there.
The next time 3 guys are chatting.
Yeah.
You guys want to wrap up? We got the next one coming up soon.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, till the next time we shoot the breeze.
First Responder Financial Freedom, episode number. Tyler, what is this?
22.
See
you guys soon. Thanks for coming and spend time with us.
See
ya.
Thanks again for spending some time with us today. If you found value in anything you heard, please share with someone who may benefit. We look forward to connecting between shows in our Facebook group, First Responder Financial Freedom. Till next time.